important to note how the Home Secretary has made, will have made a statement accepting the recommendations of Baroness Casey's audit into group-based child sexual exploitation, which included a national inquiry into grooming. We are also committed to changing the criminal law for adults penetrating children under 16. We are absolutely committed to making sure that we root out this evil these evil crimes, and continue to make sure that we do that with our work across government.
Question number 5, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are delivering commitments set out in the Cross-Government Freedom from Violence and Abuse Strategy published in December 2025, which sets out actions to prevent violence, pursue perpetrators and support victims. A ministerial group bringing together 14 departments provides strategic oversight to delivery, driving progress, addressing risk and ensuring collective ownership of our commitments to halve Borg within a decade.
Mr. Speaker, I recently visited Wolverhampton Girls High School in my constituency of Wolverhampton West and was pleased to see posters promoting the Orange Wolverhampton campaign, working with community partners in the fight against gender-based violence and abuse. Whilst the criminal justice system, of course, has a part to play in tackling violence against women and girls, does the Minister agree that we need to do more to achieve community-based early intervention and prevention, and that educating and raising awareness in our young people, especially our young boys, about Borg, can benefit not only the victims but the perpetrators and our justice system as well?
I thank the honourable gentleman. I was this weekend with Black Country Women's Aid celebrating their 40th anniversary, and they mentioned how the honourable gentleman had been incredibly supportive of them. The first 3 aims of our strategy is stopping violence before it starts, focusing on the prevention he talks about. We will focus on young people, supporting parents and working with schools to challenge misogyny and promote healthy relationships. We will also engage with industry and take decisive action to safeguard young people by making the UK one of the hardest places for children to access harmful content and misogynistic influence.
Rick Campbell.
Mr. Speaker, will the Minister undertake to consult with the Northern Ireland Justice Minister, because violence against women and girls continues to increase? Another woman killed in the past few days in Northern Ireland, and we need to take positive action to stem this misogynistic abuse of both women and girls.
Minister.
I thank the honourable gentleman, and he highlights another incredibly sad case. Of course, I work with the Justice Minister in Northern Ireland, as with all the devolved administrations. We work very, very closely to make sure that we are working together to deal with this problem collectively.
So, Secretary of State Minster.
Incomplete responses from police forces, nothing from Police Scotland. Healthcare Today reported back in 2025 that Women's Rights Network via FOIs found 1 in 7 sexual crimes, 266, Mr. Speaker, were on hospital wards. 2 in 5 female medical students reported sexual harassment or assault in university. With just 4% charge for these offences, perpetrators are getting away with it, surely committing more attacks. So with the backdrop of Labour's shameful choices on jury trials yesterday, all appalling, when will the Minister and this government act to protect women on wards?
Minister.
What I would like to say to the honourable lady, that if she were to read the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy, there is a specific sections around healthcare workers and workers across the community, specifically targeting the issue of sexual harassment within the NHS. But what I would also point out to her, that the charging rate fell in sexual crimes fell to a historic low under her government, and I am very pleased to tell the House that it is now increasing.
Rick Goldman, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, last month The Guardian revealed that suicides following domestic abuse may be vastly underreported, with research in Kent suggesting it could be 15 times more prevalent. There has been just 1 manslaughter conviction from such a death in the whole of UK legal history. Liberal Democrats in the other place recently tabled an amendment to the Crime and Policing Bill supported by Women's Aid and Advocacy After Fatal Domestic Abuse, requiring police to investigate suicides as potential homicides where there is a reasonable suspicion of a history of domestic abuse. Given the government's reluctance to support that measure, will the Minister commit to making the College of Policing's published guidance on this matter statutory so these cases are properly investigated across all forces?
I thank the Honourable Lady and once again point to this exact issue which is covered in the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy with the need to improve police responses. That is why the government has invested £13.1 million into a policing centre that focuses specifically on VOG, who have undertaken on this specific issue of suicide in domestic abuse some absolutely groundbreaking work that will lead, I very much hope, to change and further conviction, which we would all want to see.
We come to Topicals, Mohammed Yazid.
One, please, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, following International Women's Day, this government is taking another step towards a fairer Britain. We've published guidance for business to encourage them not just to report their gender pay gap, but to set out plans to tackle it. Because reducing the gender pay gap is good for women and it's good for growth too. We're expanding childcare, introducing new workplace protections and implementing a landmark strategy to tackle violence against women and girls.
Mohammed Yazid.
Mr. Speaker, the latest endometriosis UK report shows the average diagnosis time in the UK has risen to 8 years and 10 months. Constituents in Bedford and Kempston, including a staff member with a rare form, still face long delays for treatment. So will the Secretary of State set improved targets and mandate GP training on recognising endometriosis in the women's health strategy to speed up diagnosis?
Secretary of State.
My honourable friend is right that women often spend years being dismissed, misdiagnosed or just not being listened to. This is completely unacceptable and we are determined to tackle it. To improve early diagnosis of the condition, we continue to roll out community diagnostic centres, and through our renewed women's health strategy, which we'll publish soon, we'll be focused on speeding up diagnosis and treatment of mental health and gynaecological conditions, including endometriosis.
Sir, Secretary of State, Clerk of Tina.
Within an hour of the government publishing their Islamophobia definition this week, there were calls from within the Labour Party for it to be weaponised to stifle free speech. And yet we know there have been multiple cases of our public services being too scared of being called Islamophobic to speak freely to save women and girls from serious harm. So can the Secretary of State explain why the Labour Party thought it was worth trading the safety of women and girls for their own narrow political interests?
Mr. Speaker, what absolute rubbish. This is a serious issue. We know that there are people who want to pull our country apart, but I am proud that we live in a multi-ethnic, diverse and tolerant nation where we celebrate our shared values. It is right that we take action against anti-Muslim hatred in our country, as we take action on anti-Semitism too, and we've set out further steps in that area. But it is completely unacceptable that anyone would face intimidation or harassment on the basis of their faith. But that is not in conflict, Mr. Speaker, with our fundamental belief in the right to freedom of speech.
Catherine Fuchs.
An economic abuse victim loses her life every 19 days, according to Surviving Economic Abuse. With over half of domestic homicide reviews involving this form of abuse by their partner, what steps is the Secretary of State taking with Cabinet colleagues to tackle it, both through the Violence Against Women strategy of the government and through improving understanding within relevant agencies?
Minister.
I thank the Honourable Lady. The cross-government VOG strategy that she speaks of sets out an ambitious package of measures to prevent and tackle economic abuse and support victims. This includes exploring how to prevent joint mortgages being used as a tool of abuse, ensuring coerced debt is accurately reflected and addresses the very severe problem of victims' credit files, and piloting the use of economic abuse evidence form within the government to improve our response to victims of economic abuse.
Steve Blyton.
18 months ago in the King's Speech, the government announced that it would bring forward the draft Race and Disability Equality Bill. We've not seen this draft yet. Next week will be a year since the consultation was launched. When will we see the draft bill, and what will the process of scrutiny be for that bill?
Mr. Speaker, I welcome the honourable lady's interest in this area. Good progress has been made in developing the policy. We will publish the government's response as soon as we can, as well as setting out next steps in terms of legislation we'll bring forward. This was a key manifesto commitment, and we will deliver it.
Richard Quigley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The wage gap between the Isle of Wight and the rest of the UK leaves. I know you love the Isle of Wight. You just did nothing about it in power. The wage gap between the Isle of Wight and the rest of the UK leaves full-time island employees around £5,500 worse off compared to the national average. For female islanders, it's around £8,000 a year worse off. Will the Secretary of State work urgently with Cabinet colleagues to address the island wage gap, particularly for women? And does she agree that closing that gap is good for women, good for communities and good for growth?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I firmly agree that women's equality and economic growth go hand in hand. That's why I was pleased to join the Secretary of State in formally launching action plans last week, so that large employers will be encouraged to set out the steps they're taking to narrow their gender pay gap. This will ensure that women are able to thrive in the workplace across the country, including in the Isle of Wight.
Marvellous. Right, we now come to Prime Minister's questions. We start with Serena Brackenbridge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question 1.
Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our armed forces are working day and night to protect British lives and British interests in the Middle East. The RAF have flown over 230 hours of defensive operations over multiple countries, shooting down multiple drones, protecting British lives and our allies. We thank them for their courage and for their professionalism. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Prime Minister, strengthening Britain's defence capability and rebuilding our industrial base has never been more important. Can the government's £1 billion helicopter investment with Leonardo UK support skilled jobs across the UK, including Tata Steel in Wensfield and My Supply Chains in Wolverhampton North East, where we are immensely proud of our Black Country steel and manufacturing heritage? And will the Prime Minister ask relevant ministers to meet me to discuss securing more of those good jobs in Wolverhampton and Willenhall?
I can thank my honourable friend and very happy to arrange the meeting that she is asking for. Our £1 billion investment in new helicopters is good news for steelmakers in her constituency and secures thousands of jobs across the United Kingdom. Mr. Speaker, we're making defence an engine for growth. Jobs building helicopters, new Typhoons in the northwest, new frigates, creating a decade of shipbuilding on the Clyde. A Labour government investing in our armed forces.
Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Benno.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Why does the Prime Minister think now is the right time to increase the cost of petrol?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are not increasing the cost of petrol. We're absolutely clear in taking the measures that are necessary to deal with the impact of the conflict in Iran. We're dealing with that with other allies. We're taking the necessary action. But the best thing that we can do, Mr. Speaker, is to work with others to de-escalate the situation. And, Mr. Speaker, as I said to the House last week, I took the decision that we should not join the initial US-Israeli offensive against Iran. The Leader of the Opposition attacked me for that decision relentlessly. She said that the UK should have joined the US and Israel in the initial offensive strikes. Mr. Speaker, then yesterday, in the wake of the economic consequences, the Leader of the Opposition totally abandoned her position. She told the BBC, I never said we should join. She told the BBC, I I haven't said we should have gone in with the United States. That is the mother of all U-turns on the single most important decision a Prime Minister ever has to take, whether to commit the United Kingdom to war or not.
Mr. Speaker, I think the mother of all U-turns is him saying that they're not increasing fuel duty. That is news to us because last week the Chancellor stood up and said the fuel duty was going to increase in September. The Prime Minister told us at the start of the year that the cost of living was his #1 priority. So can he explain how a rise in fuel duty helps with the cost of living?
Mr. Speaker, fuel duty is frozen. It's going to remain frozen until September, and we will keep the situation under review in light of what's happening in Iran. But, Mr. Speaker, the most important issue is de-escalating the situation. And I come back to the Leader of the Opposition's position because this is one of the most important decisions a Prime Minister or Leader of the Opposition ever has to take, whether to commit your country to war. The day after the initial US-Israeli strike started, her shadow Foreign Secretary said that the US-Israeli initial attacks were absolutely right, and it is a position my party supports. She said, why has the Prime Minister not actually worked with America to be much more proactive? Last Wednesday, Leader of the Opposition. We are in this war whether we like it or not. What is the Prime Minister waiting for? Then yesterday she says, I never said, I know they don't want to hear it. I know they don't. I wouldn't want to hear it if I were them. After all that, she says...
Order. Enough is enough. I can't hear it. Who wants to lead the first ones out? Right, we'll have a little bit more silence. Prime Minister.
So after 9 days of saying, join the war, join the war, join the war, yesterday she says, I never said we should join. I haven't said we should go in with the US. I'll tell you what's happened, Mr. Speaker. She and the Reform leader have been spooked because they realise they've jumped into supporting a war without thinking through the consequences. And now she's furiously trying to backpedal.
The Prime Minister seems to be asking last week's questions. This week, I'm asking about fuel duty. He has said that he wants to help... Mr. Speaker, he has said that he wants to help with the cost of living. My constituents live in a rural area. They rely on their cars to get to the shops, take their kids to school, see their elderly parents. And they tell me the rising cost of petrol is the single biggest cost affecting family finances. So does the Prime Minister not understand how important cars are to people in rural areas, or does he just not care?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we're working across all departments and with allies to deal with the impact of the conflict in Iran, as the House would expect. But she says about, if I'd asked her last week, her position would have been, we support the initial strikes and we want to join the war. This week she says, we don't want to join the war. I'm sorry, that is a screeching U-turn. And Mr. Speaker, this is it. In this job, you don't get a second shot at making the right call on taking your country to war. If she were Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, we would be in the war, and she would be coming back to Parliament a week later to say, oh, sorry, I got that one wrong.
Order! I'm sorry I'm interrupting you, but unfortunately, we've got to stick to Prime Minister's questions, not opposition questions.
Mr. Speaker, he said if I were Prime Minister, HMS Dragon would have left a week ago. The only time... The only time he's taken decisive action was stopping Andy Burnham from standing in the by-election. But let's talk about what the people out there are worried about. I heard from a builder, Mr. Speaker, who has 115 employees using 75 vans. With the jobs tax, sky-high energy bills, and now a hike in petrol prices, that builder is having sleepless nights. How does the Prime Minister justify a rise in fuel duty to that small business owner and millions more like him up and down the country?
Prime Minister.
There hasn't been a rise. It is frozen. There isn't going. It is frozen until September. And Mr. Speaker, she mentions the HMS Dragon. Can I first start by thanking the Royal Navy who are serving on HMS Dragon? Can I second say that what's been happening is it's been carefully being loaded with the anti-strike ammunition and capability that it needs. And the Navy and civilians have been working 22-hour shifts in relationship. But in relation to those that are taking the action to defend us, what does she say? Just hanging about. Just hanging about. That's how she described our pilots in the region. Let me tell you what they've been doing. Flying sorties in 7 of the 10 countries in the region day and night, taking out incoming strikes, protecting the lives of others whilst risking their own. If she had any decency, she'd get up and she would apologise.
Mr. Speaker. Oh, hang on. I think they should wait for it. Mr. Speaker, I have never criticised our armed forces. I have criticised him.
Order. Mr. Swallow, you're going out. I've had enough. Week in, week out. Either leave no real name.
Mr. Speaker, I have never criticised our armed forces. I am criticising him and his decisions. And let me remind the House, Mr. Speaker, about his record on the armed forces. This is the same man who worked with Phil Shiner, a traitor to this country, who made up evidence to put our soldiers in prison for crimes they didn't commit. That is his record, so I won't take any lectures from him. And by the way, military families are also worried, the ones in this country, about petrol prices. He's got nothing to say on that. And there's another group of people, Mr. Speaker, who have been hammered by this government. Farmers. I spent all last year telling the Prime Minister that his family farms tax was killing British farming. Now, those farmers are being punished with higher fuel prices. Does the Prime Minister think that's fair?
So, Mr. Speaker, no apology to our pilots who are risking their lives. And I'm not going to take lectures from someone who says we should join the war, and a week later says, "Can I change my mind? I got that wrong." It is deeply embarrassing. And she's not the only one. Mr. Speaker, last week she's not the only one, the leader of Reform. We should be part of this with the US and the Israelis. We have to get rid of the regime. We should do all we can to support the operation. I make that perfectly clear, he said. Until yesterday, screeching U-turn, we shouldn't get ourselves involved in another foreign war. Two parties packed with failed Tories, led by leaders who are not fit to be Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, he doesn't want to talk about fuel duty because he has got absolutely no answers. The Conservatives are on the side of farmers. We are also on the side of drivers. We froze fuel duty every year from 2011, and in fact, we cut it in 2022 because we care about the cost of living. Labour think drivers are a cash cow. And now, Mr. Speaker, they think that drivers are a cash cow, and now they're hiking fuel duty for the first time in 15 years. Everyone in this House knows the pattern. First, he'll march his backbenchers up the hill. Then they'll be forced to defend fuel duty rises in the local elections. Then there'll be another humiliating U-turn. So why doesn't the Prime Minister just stand up, admit he's got it wrong again, and scrap the fuel duty hike now?
Mr. Speaker, in the last 2 weeks, I've made two of the most important decisions a Prime Minister can make. The first is that we should not join the war in Iran. The second is we should protect British lives and the British national interest. The leader of the opposition decided that we should join the war against Iran. A week later, that we should not join the war against Iran and to insult our armed forces. She has utterly disqualified herself from ever becoming Prime Minister. Thankfully, she never will.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Prime Minister knows, my mum proudly worked in the pot banks of Burslem and Tunstall and is watching at home right now. Now, tomorrow is International Day of Ceramics, and that matters deeply to Stoke-on-Trent, the historic heart of Britain's ceramic industry. Yes, and Newcastle underlined. With energy prices rising, again, due to global instability, will the Prime Minister please tell my mum and our fellow Stokies what additional support the government will give energy-intensive industries like ceramics so the kilns of Stoke-on-Trent can fire for generations to come?
He raised a really important issue, and I know that not only will his mum be watching, but his constituents, who he serves very, very well. Our supercharger will significantly reduce costs for thousands of major industries. Eligibility for the scheme is being reviewed this year. I can tell my honourable friend we're working with the ceramics industry on whether the scheme can be extended to more firms. Under the last government, industrial energy prices doubled and over 1,000 jobs were lost in the sector. We will not tolerate that.
Said David, Leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I pay tribute to the Honourable Member for Warrington North for her powerful and courageous speech in the debate on jury trials yesterday. I really hope the Prime Minister was listening. Mr. Speaker, 30 years ago this week, a man carried 4 handguns into Dunblane Primary School and murdered a teacher and 16 children. I was deeply moved by the BBC documentary about it last night and the courage of the parents who campaigned for a ban on handguns to keep other children safe, including Mick North, who lost his 5-year-old daughter Sophie on that dark day. He's rightly called on the Honourable Member for Clacton to renounce his description of the handgun ban as, and I quote, ludicrous, something the member still refuses to do. And Mr. North has also called for a review of firearms legislation to close any loopholes. Does the Prime Minister agree?
Prime Minister.
Well, I certainly do, and we must never forget the horror of Dunblane and never forget the young children and their teacher who did not come home from school. The campaign that families fought to make this country a safer place is a lasting legacy, and we should be enormously grateful for their courage.
Sir Ed Davey.
The Prime Minister for his reply, and I hope the government will close any loopholes. Mr. Speaker, this week families across the country have seen petrol prices rise at the pump, mortgage rates go up, and fixed energy deals get more expensive, all because of a war they did not start and do not support. The leader of the Conservatives has been competing with the Honourable Member for Clacton to be Donald Trump's biggest cheerleader. And the Prime Minister was right to reject their costly warmongering. But last week, I asked him to guarantee that energy bills won't rise by hundreds of pounds in July. He didn't answer. So let me try again. Will he give people that energy bill guarantee now?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank him for raising this, because people will be really worried about the impact on them, and just to reassure households that the cap is in place until the end of June, until July, and therefore that deals with the situation for households there. We are working with the sector and with others and with allies to do everything we can to make sure those energy bills don't rise, so we're working round the clock on that. The most important thing, the most effective thing we can do is to work with our allies to find a way to de-escalate the situation. He's right about the Leader of the Opposition, the Leader of Reform. Last week they were urging us to join, this is serious, to join. If they had been leading the country, we'd be in a war, and they'd now come to Parliament to say, oop.
Order. Prime Minister. Who said lying again? I want that withdrawn. Is that withdrawn? And I'll deal with it, thank you. I don't want any more off the front bench. We take it very seriously, and calling another member a liar is not acceptable. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and so that's our position.
Josh Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Too often I hear from SEND families in Hertford and Stortford whose children have been left out of education for months or even years because they can't get a school place that meets their needs within a reasonable distance. I'm campaigning for more investment in the bricks and mortar SEND provision that semi-rural communities like ours need, so families can access support early and easily and their children can thrive in education. So will the Prime Minister back my campaign to expand SEND provision in Hertford and Stortford, and will he arrange a meeting with the relevant minister so we can discuss it in more detail?
Yeah. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, he's right. Families are crying out for change, and that's why it's really critical we get this right. Our reforms will fix the broken SEND system, where parents have to fight for support, replacing it with tailored support personal to a child's need. A Best Start family hub in every local authority with a dedicated SEND practitioner will help families with face-to-face support they need. My honourable friend's a great advocate on this issue, and I'm happy to make sure he gets the meeting that he's asking for.
Stephen Flynn.
Mr. Speaker, let's be clear. Donald Trump's war in Iran is illegal, and the situation that has unfolded since is verging on insane. Oil is falling from the skies, sewers are exploding, the IRGC is indiscriminately attacking civilians across the region, cargo ships and potentially even mining the Strait of Hormuz, the economic consequences of which will be stark for the global economy but for every single person living on these isles too. And whether the Prime Minister accepts it or not, he did indeed take us into that war when he allowed the Americans to use UK bases just last week. But I have a specific question. He'll have seen the same footage I have of an American Tomahawk missile landing on a primary school, killing 110 children. Does he believe that to be a war crime?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we're all concerned by that footage, but let me be absolutely clear with him. We have 300,000 UK nationals, including Scottish citizens, in the region. Strikes, missiles and drones are being fired into the region, putting them at great danger. We are taking action to protect them. I'm astonished that the SNP says don't take action to support Scottish citizens in the region. It's outrageous.
Peter Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. National Highways, the government-owned company, has reneged on a promise to replace a demolished footbridge at Park Lane West in Netherton. It crossed one of the busiest roads and junctions in Merseyside, used by countless residents, particularly children and parents going to and from infant and primary school. My constituents have requested that that bridge be replaced with no ifs or buts. Will the Prime Minister support my constituents' very reasonable request to honour that promise made by National Highways?
Can I thank him for campaigning for his constituents, his residents, who are obviously concerned about this. As I understand it, National Highways has concluded the best option for all users, pedestrians and cyclists, is a new crossing. But I thank him for raising the points, and I'll be happy for ministers to continue discussing with him the options.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This afternoon, the Mandelson papers, or the first tranche, will be released, bringing into the light for the first time UK institutional knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein and those associated with him. But here in the UK, we have our own Epstein, Mohammed Fayed, and the institutions that supported his crimes. As a co-chair of the APPG for the survivors of Al-Fayed and Harrods, along with the Honourable Member for Lichfield, we welcome the actions of the Metropolitan Police in recent days, but we continue to call on them to describe those crimes as what they were, trafficking. Does the Prime Minister recognise that characterisation, and will he meet with the APPG and survivors to hear their asks?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank you for raising this really important issue? And I discussed it with the Honourable Member for Lichfield last night, particularly the approach of the APPG, and thank her for her important work on this issue. I'm very happy to meet the APPG and the victims. I think it's very important to do so. She'll know there's an ongoing police investigation, but that doesn't mean that we can't have the meeting and listen to those that need to be listened to.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Team Derby is our partnership making sure that the billions of pounds in investment that this Labour government is bringing into Derby benefits the people of Derby in regeneration, skills and good jobs. The government's record investment in Rolls-Royce submarines means hundreds of new jobs and apprenticeships in Derby. So will the Prime Minister firmly reject the Green Party's defence policies, which would decimate jobs in Derby and leave the United Kingdom unprotected?
Can I thank her? Derby is part of our industrial heritage and has a bright future. Initiatives, as she says, like Team Derby are so important to strengthen key sectors like defence, creating jobs and growth. Our £9 billion deal with Rolls-Royce to boost our fleet of nuclear submarines is testament to that, creating more than 1,000 jobs and safeguarding 4,000 more. Those that oppose all that must answer to the working people that they claim to represent.
The Prime Minister will be happy that I'm not going to ask about fuel duty. Businesses across South West Hertfordshire are telling me they're now reluctant to take on young workers due to this government's rise in employer national insurance contributions and the crippling employment rights bill. With almost 1 million young people now not in employment, education or training, how exactly does the Prime Minister plan to get Great Britain working again?
Mr. Speaker, we're putting in place the youth guarantee, which helps young people into work. It is a serious issue. I would remind him that on their watch, 1 in 8 young people were neither in education, training or work.
Stringer.
Mr. Speaker, the National Audit Office report on Northern Powerhouse Rail, which came out on Monday of this week, surprised none of us in its conclusions that lack of engagement by the Department of Transport with mayoral authorities, local authorities and other involved parties in the north of England was leading to poor programming and lack of investment in the rail system in the north of England. We deserve in the north of England a rail system fit for the 21st century, not the 19th century, which is what it is fit for. Investing in the rail system will enable growth in the north of England, which will benefit the whole of the country. Will the Prime Minister take a personal interest in the slowness of investment in the rail system so that we can have that growth?
Prime Minister. Well, thank you for raising this important point. The party opposite gave nothing but false promises for a decade. We will deliver the biggest transformation of transport in the north for a generation, providing up to £45 billion of funding to deliver. We're taking forward all recommendations from the NAO report. That doesn't change the planning or the trajectory of the project.
Dr. Andrew Morris.
Mr. Speaker, grant cuts and over-optimistic Treasury assumptions on council tax base growth mean that 8 fire stations and 96 retained firefighters across Wiltshire and Dorset face the axe. Would the Prime Minister please facilitate an urgent ministerial meeting for Wiltshire and Dorset MPs to discuss extending the precept flexibility permitted elsewhere at no cost to the Treasury to our fire and rescue service, so its fire stations and its dedicated firefighters can continue to serve our community?
Prime Minister.
I thank him for raising this. I don't know the details in a particular case, but I will make sure that the relevant meeting is set up so that the details can be explored.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Russia's continued assault on Ukraine has devastated its healthcare system. Hospitals are under extreme pressure and their critical shortage of specialist staff to treat the injured. That is why I, along with other British physiotherapists, travelled to Ukraine to train clinicians who are working under unimaginable strain. Will the Prime Minister join me in thanking Tanisha Sandhu, Daniel Sim, Kay Joe, Andrew Jaggi for the remarkable work, and will he commit to expanding UK-Ukraine
clinical training partnerships?
Yes, I will. And can I pay tribute to her and the rest of the delegation for their commendable work in Kyiv. We recently announced a new package of support for Ukraine, enabling highly skilled British surgeons, nurses and physiotherapists to mentor Ukrainian clinicians treating complex battlefield injuries. Mr. Speaker, on one of my recent trips to Kyiv, I went to one of the hospitals where they were treating the burns of those returning from the front line, and it was humbling to see the work that was being done, and I was extremely proud to know that the UK was helping in treating those who had such awful burns.
Kirsten Black.
Westminster's tax on Scotland's energy is holding back investment, and it's costing thousands of families their livelihoods. After months of refusing to do so, the Chancellor has finally now said she is committed to change. So will the Prime Minister confirm to the House today when the OGPM will be introduced to provide certainty for jobs, certainty for investment and, crucially, certainty for energy security?
Prime Minister. Speaker, we all want certainty for energy security, and oil and gas will be part of the mix for many years to come. I'd remind her that 70,000 jobs were lost under the SNP and Conservatives in the last decade. We want energy security. We see new nuclear as part of that energy security. And what the SNP do, they block it.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. Silently and in semi-secrecy, London and the south-east of England are experiencing the largest mass eviction by a private landlord in decades. Criterion Capital have issued at least 130 no-fault evictions across their portfolio, including in Britannia Point in Collier's Wood in my constituency. Those affected have done nothing wrong. They have paid their rent, looked after their homes and worked hard. They are simply victims of a voracious landlord who always wants more. Will the Prime Minister ensure that in the final weeks before the abolition of no-fault evictions, his government do all they can to hold Criterion Capital to account?
Can I thank her for raising this case? Renters should have security, and I condemn any unfair evictions. I'm proud, Mr. Speaker, to be abolishing Section 21, a practice that's pushed thousands of renters into homelessness. And I'll make sure the Housing Minister looks at the case that she's raised.
Graham Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Rural residents in Beverley and Holderness are reeling under the impact of higher fuel prices. Yet 2 days ago, the Chancellor said that in September, fuel duty would go up. So my constituents want to know, as the Leader of the Opposition repeatedly asked, is that fuel duty going to go up in September and add to the misery of my constituents or not? Prime Minister, for once in this place, give the House and the people of this country an answer. Yes or no?
Fuel duty is frozen. It'll be frozen until September. In light of what's happening in Iran, of course we'll look carefully at the situation. But his constituents need to know, and it's right that they know, that it's frozen until September, not fear-marking.
Martin Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The devastating fire on Union Street in Glasgow has destroyed small businesses and an iconic part of the city's heritage. But the exceptional skill and courage of our emergency services prevented an even greater tragedy. We need a rapid, thorough investigation with urgent implementation of recommendations. Local businesses, commuters and residents are already feeling the impact, and recovery must be a shared priority. Will the Prime Minister join me in thanking our emergency services and supporting efforts to rebuild this vital part of Glasgow?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank him for raising this devastating incident for Glasgow? My thoughts, and I'm sure everybody's thoughts, are with those who've seen their businesses and their livelihoods destroyed. Can I thank the emergency services who responded so quickly to the situation? And the people of Glasgow have seen far too many historic buildings suffer terrible fires over the last few years. And that's why we're investing to protect heritage buildings in England. But we'll keep a careful eye on the situation that arises.
Stephen Gatlin.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday in the Welsh Senedd, a secret Whitehall memo was called out by its members that showed this government's attitude to devolution, a muscular unionism that Boris Johnson would have been proud of. So can I ask the Prime Minister, when Scottish and Welsh voters go to the polls, will he respect that decision? And furthermore, what is it about those elections that so seems to terrify him at the moment?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to make any apologies for spending more money in Scotland or in Wales to improve people's lives. There's been record investment under this government into Scotland. The question is, where's the money gone, John?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, members from across this House and the other place felt compelled to write to Joe Boydell, the Chief Executive of Travelodge, following reports that in 2022, a man was given a key card and the room number of a woman staying alone in one of their hotels by staff, entered her room and sexually assaulted her. Most alarmingly, statements made by Travelodge implied that staff had acted fully in line with their security and safety protocols and within industry standards. Will the Prime Minister join me in urging Ms Boydell to take us up on our invitation to meet with all interested members of this House and the other place to outline what action Travelodge are urgently taking to meet their duty to safeguard women staying in their hotels?
Can I thank her for raising this absolutely shocking case and for talking to me last night about the details of it. My thoughts are with the victim, who had a right to be safe and who has failed in the most appalling way. Travelodge must take serious action to ensure such an appalling incident can never happen again. I'm concerned at reports that they haven't met members of Parliament. They should do so, and I should add that the Safeguarding Minister wants to meet them as well, and they should do that as well.
Vicky Slade.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 2 weeks ago, it was confirmed that no extra time will be provided in the other place to allow the assisted dying bill to complete its course. If this blocks the will of this democratically elected House, it will be a travesty for democracy and, more importantly, a tragedy for all those who are relying on it and have waited so long, not least my own dad. Will he act now to prevent the dismissal of the views of 76% of the public, especially as other parts of our country approve it, and so secure a real legacy for social policy in this Parliament?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank her for raising this? And I know there are strong views, and I acknowledge her personal connection in relation to this, which shows how serious the issues are. It is a matter of conscience. It's for Parliament to decide the passage of the legislation and any changes. Scrutiny is a matter for the other place. We have a responsibility to make sure any legislation is workable, effective and enforceable.
That completes Prime Minister's questions. Is it about your PMQs? Well, you didn't ask a question, so is it relevant? The points of order should come after statements and new cues. But I'll make that decision. We now come to the urgent question. Ian Lavery.
Mr. Speaker, what assessment has the Minister made of the impact of Royal Mail's failure to meet its universal service obligation on service users' well-being and on the company's recent decision-making which has contributed to this situation?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the honourable member for raising a question which I know is on honourable members' minds across the House. The Government has been clear the Royal Mail service has not been good enough, and we recognise the terrible impact that delayed time-sensitive deliveries, particularly relating to medical and financial matters, have on users of postal services, and especially for vulnerable users. Obviously, Royal Mail is a private company, and Ofcom is the independent regulator for postal services. They secure the provision of the universal postal service and set and monitor Royal Mail's service standards. As part of that monitoring regime, Ofcom publishes annual post-monitoring reports which consider developments in the sector and users' experience of postal services, as well as complaints and compensation data that Royal Mail is required to publish. I have regular discussions with senior officials from Ofcom as the regulator, and in fact, Mr Speaker, I'm meeting Ofcom later this afternoon to discuss these concerns. Ofcom fined Royal Mail £21 million in October for failure to meet standards for 24-25, double the previous year's fine, and a third consecutive annual fine for poor performance. Ofcom continues to monitor Royal Mail's performance carefully to ensure it is providing the service that customers expect. Ofcom has told Royal Mail that it must publish and deliver a credible plan that delivers significant and continuous improvement. But while Ofcom are the regulator, in response to concerns raised by honourable members across this House, I met Royal Mail CEO Alistair Cochrane recently to set out the volume of complaints reporting service delays that I've received from colleagues. And in addition to that meeting, the Secretary of State met Daniel Krasinski, CEO of Royal Mail's parent company EP Group and Chair of Royal Mail's board, and raised concerns about Royal Mail's performance, and senior officials from Ofcom met Mr Krasinski that same day. The chief executives of Royal Mail and its parent company report that they agree that there is more to do to meet service delivery targets and improve stability and reliability for customers. I know honourable members will continue to raise their concerns on behalf of service within their area, and for my part I will continue to do so because the current situation is simply not good enough.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank my honourable friend for his answer, but you know, this goes beyond a few inconsequential letters being delayed. Indeed, it's not simply a case of receiving post, it's also about a timely manner, but sending post as well. In my constituency of Blyth and Asherton, these failures have led to people missing medical appointments, financial issues and hindering the democratic participation. One of my constituents missed urgent medical correspondence, turning a routine appointment into a potentially life-threatening emergency. It's not acceptable. This is happening up and down the country in every single constituency in this place. Allegations from within Royal Mail suggest that these failures may be intentional, designed to pressure the government into weakening or removing the USO requirements. Royal Mail's recent letter to the Business and Trade Committee denies operating a parcels first policy, contradicting repeated internal testimonies. It flies in the face of local evidence from the workforce. The letter also reiterates calls for USO reform, reflecting a long-running corporate direction. Over the past few years, postal workers who were key public servants, who were heroes during COVID, have seen their terms and conditions eroded to the point that some can no longer buy additional holidays because doing so would take their pay below the minimum wage. The government need to take serious action against Royal Mail. It's an option, is it not, sorry, an option to possibly bring back Royal Mail under public control. Mr Speaker, this is approaching the situation where one of our constituents will lose their homes, their health, or even their lives through these persistent failures. The government can and must take steps to maintain this critical national service.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The honourable member's anger, I think, is shared by honourable members around the chamber when they hear the stories of people missing not just hospital appointments, but people finding themselves with CCJs and other situations that are entirely not of their fault due to failures of delivery. We have told at Royal Mail it's not good enough, and the Select Committee has told them it's not good enough. Ofcom have told them it's not good enough. I think the seriousness with which we take this is exemplified by the fact, as I say, the Secretary of State has convened that meeting. I have called in at Royal Mail, and as I mentioned a moment ago, I'm meeting Ofcom later today to raise exactly the issues that my honourable friend raises.
Dame Harriet Baldwin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for granting this urgent question. And can I congratulate the honourable member on achieving this urgent question, because we can see from the number of people who are interested in this topic just how serious this is across all our constituencies. And I can testify to the fact that in West Worcestershire, I have had an enormous amount of casework on this, starting just before Christmas, but it's been hospital appointments missed, it's been children's birthday cards not arriving, it's been condolence cards for recently widowed individuals, and it's been postal voting forms as well. So this is an absolutely critical issue. And I would reiterate that the universal service obligation is an obligation. It is an obligation set out in statute, and it is an obligation to every household in this country. And we can all testify to the fact that it has been systematically broken. And I think we can point to a turning point, which was when the new owner bought Royal Mail with this government's approval in, I think, April 2025, the transaction went through. The letter from Royal Mail that was received by the Business and Trade Committee yesterday revealed something like over 200 million letters have been delivered late this year. And I want to ask the Minister, in addition to the meetings that he has listed with Ofcom, what assessments he's made as to how distressing this is being for all of our constituents. What impact is it having on people's well-being? Has he had a critical discussion with Ofcom? Because it appears that Ofcom is not really doing its job as a regulator. The public are paying more, but they are getting less. And the fines that he has listed really don't reflect the deterioration that we've seen recently. Now, in my discussions with Royal Mail, I've heard them say that parcels overwhelm them at Christmas, but this situation is carrying on now into March. Is it the reality that, in fact, parcels are much more...
Order. Don't rule ladies over time. I was trying to push her along to give me the answer, but there seems to be more pages. Can we now end?
We can certainly now end by asking for the Minister's plan in terms of...
Bad enough, Minister. I don't need that bike chat. Come on, mate.
Thank you. I hope she can tell from my own body language and tone that I share the anger and frustration of members across the House. As I mentioned, I'm meeting Ofcom later today to raise the very issues that she makes. I'll slightly take issue with the year zero approach that she took there. There are very long-standing issues with Royal Mail, driven in fairness by the changes in consumer habits and the things that we are sending and not sending anymore. She mentions the new ownership. As part of that deed of undertaking, this government got the assurance and the undertaking from the new owners that they could not take value out of the company until service improved. That shows that we take this seriously.
Lee Barron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'll refer members to my register of interest. It's not just the customers who are rightly angry, it's postal workers as well, because they take pride in their job, they take pride in the service that they give. Last time I was in Corby delivery office, 6 deliveries never went out that day. The time before that, a postal worker volunteered to cover his own delivery on his day off, was told he couldn't. When he went back in the day after, the work was still there, the delivery hadn't gone out. We've now got a 2-tier workforce, leading to a recruitment and retention crisis, and it's a standing joke in the job that if the quickest way to get a letter delivered is to put it inside of a parcel. Would the Minister agree with me that instead of imposing top-down changes by people who have never done the job before, they should now listen to their workforce, sit down with the union and sort this mess out?
Minister.
Thank you. My honourable friend gives me the opportunity to do what I've not done so far, which is to say that whatever criticisms honourable members across the House have, it's in no way a critique of the work of our heroic posties up and down the country. I mentioned earlier on the Secretary of State brought together management and unions That it's a private company. We're not seeking to insert ourselves and to become mediators, but that was a signal of how seriously we take this and how seriously we take the need for them to come together and address, through mutual understanding, exactly the issues that my honourable friend raises.
Only Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Mr Speaker, in each year since 2023, Royal Mail has been fined by Ofcom over delivery delays. It amounts to nearly £40 million. And following recent announcements, it wouldn't surprise me if they're fined again in 2026. When Royal Mail were reprimanded in 2023 and 2024, their leadership promised that reforms would be made to improve their services. But following the £21 million fine in October 2025, the company said it couldn't publish its improvement plan until negotiations with the Communication Workers Union concluded. The takeover of Royal Mail, which this government supported, seems to have done nothing to improve the service so far. Over the past several years, an average of roughly 1 in 4 first-class stamp letters arrives late. And now recent reports suggest that 219 million letters may arrive late this year. These letters are sometimes urgent and hold important information, so it is clear that Royal Mail are repeatedly failing to meet their universal service obligation, but despite this, their stamp prices have consistently risen. This includes next month's planned rise of 10p in the cost of first-class postage, taking the cost of a stamp to £1.80. The sorry saga of Royal Mail has gone on for far too long. Would the Minister tell me whether he believes the British public should be paying more for their postal service, despite Royal Mail repeatedly failing to deliver their letters on time?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Paying more for postage is obviously part of the journey towards financial sustainability for Royal Mail as a critical piece of national infrastructure. But I absolutely agree with her that if our constituents are paying more for their stamps, they expect those letters to arrive. And it's not good enough if they aren't. She mentions Ofcom. As I said, I'm meeting with them later on. They have required from Royal Mail that improvement plan. We think that's long overdue, and one of the issues that I will be raising with Ofcom later on is progress with that improvement plan.
Well, Speaker, and I refer the House to my register of interest as a proud son of a local postie. We know this isn't the fault of the workers. We know that they are working day in, day out to get these letters out, but we know